Hey, what's up? Zach here, and today I've got the all-new Nike Pegasus Premium, and these things are just packed with fun things to look at. They also have just some ridiculously cool use cases. They also have a lot of cons. There are a lot of things that come with some price tags, not monetary, that come with all this tech and the design. So I just make sure you dive deep into them before you decide to make a purchase. Let's get into them. All right, now starting off in the uppers, the bulk of it is just two pieces of woven mesh. They're kind of fused together by this ribbon tape here. And on the top, it's very open, porous TPU woven mesh. You can see on the microscope, a little more open. And then on the sides of it, on the rails, medial and lateral side, it is a much more, tightly braided weave going down there, a little bit more support on the sides. However, there's still a ton of breathing channels through the medial and lateral sides of it. And as you can see on the underside of that, there is some backing that reinforces the lace line, which is fantastic. And that also has circular cutouts for breathability. All that is great. When you tie it on the middle of the shoe, you're just getting a little more surface area lockdown going into that sole board, so a little bit more secure lockdown in the midfoot. Now, I can't say the same for the rear foot, although you do get, a pretty decent amount of padding going through the rear foot, through the ankle collar and heel counter. Heel slippage on these, I found if I had a runner's knot in them, which was mild to moderate. If I just used the second most proximal lace eyelet, like the more casual lace eyelet, it was moderate to where I could just slip out of it pretty easily. And if I used even the most posterior eyelet, not using runner's knot, but just lacing them all through, heel slippage was still moderate. I could still get my foot out of there. That got worse with an orthotic. If I had the runner's knot in there, it stayed but mild to moderate. It really didn't notice it. But if I didn't have that runner's knot in there and I was just lacing it straight up with the orthotic, I could still just slip out of my heel. I felt like it was almost floating out of the shoe. So it's got a runner's knot in there. It's meant to be used, so use it. The tongue is not gusseted at all, and there's not even a lace loop through it. It's padded decently enough, and it's porous enough to where it exchanges heat and moisture really well, which we'll see in a second. But like I said, it would have been nice to have either a gusset or at least a lace loop to keep it straight, because sometimes it can start moving on you, especially if you've got an orthotic in there. Like I said, we'll talk about that in the fit section, the best strategies for orthotics in these, because I do think orthotics are a really good idea in these, both for longevity as well as different gait styles. Now, I've got this thing on the heat map, only heated up 90.6 degrees, which that's pretty much Nike's MO. They have really excellent breathability. And you can see on all the images there, heat is just really radiating out of most of the forefoot of the shoe as well as the midfoot of this shoe. So there's a lot of points for heat egress as well as moisture egress. Obviously, there's not as much moisture getting out of the sides of the shoe. There is, you can see some fog getting out of there, but it's really concentrated in the front of the shoe. But suffice to say, in terms of breathability, like most of other Nike running products, they're pretty darn good. Like these things on the upper durability test, 10-second tire grit sandpaper, I've actually taken to doing this on running shoes on the inside of the toe box, because on most road running shoes, you're gonna take more damage from your toes and your toenails versus any asphalt, cement, or concrete. It did not get through the textile underneath of it, so it also has a little bit of a drag guard on the outside. It does not have a dedicated toenail guard on the inside, but it was still comfortable, and my burr didn't get through it, so that was nice to see. All right, but getting into the midsole teardown, it's just as cool on the inside as it looks on the outside. You do have a full-length Zoom Air unit that is parabolic. It does follow the shape of the drop of the shoe. On top of that is Zoom X foam. On the bottom is React X foam. Remember, that's the EVA plus TPE. Honestly, React X, to me, is like just as soft as Zoom X. The thing is with these, no, you don't get a shank. Yeah, Zoom X has that urethane pouch. You do have this little piece of, I guess it's like plastic TPU on the bottom, but it's so flexible, it's not doing anything. It's almost like the original Nike GT Cut 3, right? It's along for the ride, so I'm not giving these a shank score. Look at things on the bounce height test. Really no surprise, got 35 centimeters in the rear foot and then 40 in the forefoot. You're getting a little bit more of the Zoom X foam, honestly, in the forefoot, because a little bit larger volume, because it fills the space from the drop of the Zoom Air unit. The large volume Zoom Airs don't necessarily get a ton of bounce height because there's so much volume for that shock to go through with the ball bearing. React X foam to me also is, like I said, a little more shock absorbing. Don't get it twisted. It's incredibly comfortable. You can feel the spring back, especially when you're distal midfoot striking. The problem with this is that kind of like some other Nike running shoes is you can get potential for a negative heel because there's really not a lot bracing the rear foot. There's not a lot just bracing the shoe in general. So if you're a heavy heel striker, you can actually be running uphill on these. Now, this midsole does give a little bit of a kick, for sure. I mean, there's tensile air in there, there's PEBX on the top, there's EVA and TPE on the bottom. I mean, there's some kick there, but if you're heavier and you're pummeling through the rear foot of the shoe, like I said, there is potential for that negative heel, which gives a lot of eccentric loading on the Achilles tendon. Like I said, we'll talk about that more in the fit section, but I wanted to bring it up now just to kind of know what I'm talking about once we get to the fit and the running profiles of them. All right, but getting into the outsole tread of the Pegasus Premium, pretty standard for most recent Pegasus shoes. It's pretty much their lug pattern. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. A lot of surface area, wears down pretty evenly. You do get some pretty generous pods of lugs in the rear foot too. That should tell you something in terms of the rear foot and forefoot, which, like I said, we'll talk about. Look at this thing on the outsole durability test, 10 seconds high grit sandpaper. I mean, almost millimeter of damage. Durometer on this is 12.5. So I think as long as you're sharing the load on this, as long as you're not high shear, with the tread depth on these, honestly, they shouldn't do too bad. The smoother, more tuned gait you've got, the longer these last, really no shocker like most running shoes. Look at these things in the speed ratio. They only come in at a 2.89 Shank score of 0, so they don't get any points for that. And I kind of feel like that's where they belong unless you've got an orthotic in them. If you've got an orthotic in them, really any orthotic in that semi-flexible to rigid category really turns these things into a little bit more of a powerful shoe. The kick is a lot more powerful. The load distribution in the shoe is a lot more powerful. You actually get the best of this shoe, I think, with an orthotic in there. Even, like I said, something low profile. I had a Power Step Pulse Thin in these things because, like I said, the heel slippage. And that really turned these things into gazelles. And so that's why I think in terms of these things, if you're looking for speed, and if you don't want to be climbing a hill in these, throw the orthotic in there. Like I said, just make sure it's low profile, but even with a low profile orthotic, like I said, really just turns these shoes on its head. All right, but speaking of being turned on your head, the fit of these things was just the most bizarre thing. Number one, they have a resting everted position of 0 degrees with loading that goes to 4 degrees. And you can see that Zoom Air compressing under my single limb weight. And so, I mean, honestly, it's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. It does not allow as much even as I thought, but still does compress. It's not a max stability shoe. It does have a 12-degree inflare, so not honestly terrible for a running shoe. They do come in at 29.1 centimeters of length, 9.8 centimeters of metatarsal width. You can even see over here, the insole, you see how it bows out here in the metatarsals. The thing is in it swoops way in once you get to the toes. It only has a 10.4 centimeter toe box width and then a toe box taper of 31 degrees. So it's super generous in the metatarsals and then not at all into the toe box. It's kind of weird in the shape of it, even the insole, the shape of it's kind of weird. Like, I liked it because, I had tons of room in my metatarsals. They were not uncomfortable at all. It's just that, if you're someone that wants a little more room in the toe box, these aren't it. And then it is a little bit more of a low volume nature just because of the nature of the tongue, right? It's not gusseted, it moves around a lot. So I'd say a narrow medium foot, you just go true to size. A 2E, the metatarsals are wide enough. You can go true to size. A 4E, you can go up 1/2 size on these things. And I think you fit in these. The thing is, you start going up in these things, you're gonna get heel slippage. So it's kind of one of those things where your foot is going to fit into the confines of the shoe. Honestly, the uppers are so malleable, like you'll break them in. But it's just that, if you're someone that likes more wide toe box, more barefoot style, these are definitely not your pick. But that being said, me as a 2E had 0 problems, 0 cramping, 0 pain, 0 anything. So I'd say aside from me having to crank down the laces when I had a orthotic in these to, get rid of any heel slippage, I didn't have really any problems with them. Some felted foam under the tongue or some moleskin under the tongue can take care of that too. So I think honestly, it's the arch height versus the width that's a little bit more of the concern in these things. You might have to augment a little bit, which honestly isn't that big of a deal. In terms of people I'll be recommending these for, number one, not heel strikers. And if you are a heel striker, if you can put, like I said, an orthotic in them that has some rigid plastic, some rigid TPU back there, you're gonna get a lot, they're gonna do a lot better for you. I think they actually come up to where they're actually runnable. If not, like I said, you're gonna get a lot of eccentric loading on the Achilles. You're gonna get some eversion right at heel strike. It's gonna be tough to start resupinating your foot. It's gonna be tough to start climbing that mountain. So I think for heel strikers, an orthotic is mandatory, and even then, it's not going to be the easiest ride. Midfoot, distal midfoot, and forefoot strikers, have at them. They're great. I'd say for forefoot strikers, it's interesting on the heat mapping. After I had run these things, I was doing a lot of forefoot striking just to kind of see how I'd feel. And you can even see where it's actually hotter in the shoe, hotter in the zoom in, right under my metatarsal heads. So it is kind of taking a beating under the forefoot when you're just doing forefoot striking. I thought that was really fascinating. Just happenstance, I had to be doing that right after I was doing a lot of forefoot striking in these, see how they were doing. To me, it's distal midfoot to midfoot is the best thing in these because you're using the largest volume of zoom. You're using the most surface area of these. If you have an orthotic in them, they feel out of this world. So if you are a midfoot to distal midfoot striker, these are, and you have an orthotic in them, these are one of the better shoes out there. I don't think these are great walking shoes. In terms of like standing around casual, like if you're wearing them to work or whatever, I don't think it's bad. Just for, like I said, standing around. But like I said, you start rocking back and yeah, eccentric training, eccentric loading is great under controlled circumstances, not when you're running, right? Not when you're in single limb stance. And like I said, forefoot strikers with an orthotic, I think they're fine. You just might end up getting some abnormally shortened lifespan out of them. And honestly, I don't know if I would have really recognized that without the heat gun. So I love your thoughts in the comments down below, especially this versus some of the other Pegasus that have come out recently. Like I said, love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. And if you do want to see another brand new Pegasus shoe that just came out, the brand new Nike Pegasus and the Pegasus Turbo, make sure you click into either one of these videos above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.